the Institute for Democratic Education, in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute, presents another program in its series, Lest We Forget These Great Americans, stories of Americans who will never die. These Great Americans, with John Carradine as Woodrow Wilson, a series of programs designed to bring you the stories of men and women who dedicated their lives to the principles set down by America's founders, that all men are created equal. Today,
in memoriam, Thomas Woodrow Wilson, 28th President of the United States, born 1856, died 1924. He spoke for all men, and he said to all men,
"You are our brothers, and we invite you into the comradeship of liberty."
And in 1945, 2 decades after his death, a great monument was built to the memory of Woodrow Wilson. A monument more imperishable than bronze or stone, for it was cut with the sharp instruments of war and forged in the ideals of a new brotherhood of man.
San Francisco, June 1945. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined
to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind.
And to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small.
And to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained.
And to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom.
And for these ends to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors.
And to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security.
Accordingly, our respective governments, through representatives assembled in the city of San Francisco, have agreed to the present charter of the United Nations and do hereby establish an international organization to be known as the United Nations.
The monument is built at last, Woodrow Wilson. It stands strong and firm, its columns straddled far across the horizons of earth and its foundations dug deep in the hearts of all nations. The people can be proud, Woodrow Wilson. The monument to peace is bought and paid for. But our pride is filtered with shame, for the cost was great.
The white crosses and the 6-pointed stars of David mark the earth of the world from Cherbourg to Chongqing, from Attu to Okinawa. And the tears of 300,000 wives and mothers give the words new meaning.
The War Department regrets to inform you that your son, John Smith, was killed in action.
The cost was great, as Woodrow Wilson knew it would be, when in 1919 he said,
"If the covenant of the League of Nations should ever in any important respect be impaired, I would feel like asking the Secretary of War to get the boys who went across the water to fight together on some field where I could go and see them. And I would stand up before them and say, 'Boys, I told you before you went across the seas that this was a war against wars, and I did my best to fulfill the promise. But I am obliged to come to you in mortification and shame and say I have not been able to fulfill the promise. You are betrayed. You fought for something you did not get. And the glory of the armies and navies of the United States is gone like a dream in the night. And there ensues upon it, in the suitable darkness of the night, the nightmare of dread which lay upon the nations before this war came. And there will come some time, in the vengeful providence of God, Another struggle in which not a few 100,000 fine men from America will have to die, but as many millions as are necessary to accomplish the final freedom of the peoples of the world.
The words of Woodrow Wilson, uttered in the year of the last victory that Wilson knew was only part victory. Those words are not forgotten.
XB, President sails for Paris. Peace conference. Read all about it.
And, gentlemen, as a senator and as a statesman, it is my mature opinion that once the ship carrying Woodrow Wilson passes beyond the boundaries of the United States, the president ceases to be president.
Loyal German Americans, the outright brutality and inhumanity of President Wilson's 14 points are a cancer upon the conscience of all white Christian Americans. The Catholics and the Jews are behind this infamous plot upon your fatherland.
The plotters against the peace had started a campaign that was to last for 23 years. And as Woodrow Wilson joined the peacemakers in Paris, the voices of narrow greed, of party politics, of intolerance were raised to fever pitch. True, their voices were small and few, but then, as now, their whispers were amplified to raucous shouts through the megaphones of the demagogues.
The Ku Klux Klan goes on record as opposed to Woodrow Wilson's plot against Christianity, which he chooses to call the League of Nations.
The Christian Defenders of America call for the impeachment of Woodrow Wilson.
And the plotters against the peace found leaders in the Congress, too.
Gentlemen, for the first time since the founding of this republic, the President of the United States has sailed from our shores to meddle in matters outside the interests of America. In his hands, Mr. Wilson clutches a document which he chooses to call the 14 Points. Oh, gentlemen, no man loves peace more than I. But the 14 Points of Woodrow Wilson erases our great traditions forever. So I say to you, while the president has gone off to look after the affairs of the world, let's be grateful for the chance he's given us to save America first.
And in Paris, these loud, frenzied voices were heard. And finally, across the peace table, the question was thrown.
Monsieur le Président, you will pardon what I am about to say, but you have come here with fine ideals. The 14 Points, the League of Nations. These are a great dream. But, Monsieur le Président, how can we agree to these things when even the people of your own country oppose them?
Monsieur Clemenceau, I am the elected leader of a democracy. I do not speak to the people. I speak for them. In my country there are many voices that speak not for the majority of people, but for a minority that spews hatred and greed. Often they are loud enough to be heard at this very table. But loud as they are, they do not speak for the majority, Monsieur Clemenceau.
But, Monsieur le Président...
Monsieur, those voices are as raucous in your country as in mine. But there is another voice, too, stronger than all these. There is a great voice of humanity abroad in the world just now, which he who cannot hear is deaf. There is a great clamor of the common conscience, now in existence, which if any statesman resists, will gain for him the unenviable opprobrium of history. In our work here at this peace table, we are not obeying the mandate of party or politics. We are obeying the mandate of humanity.
Wilson spoke for the people, but it is to our shame that the people did not speak for him.
The future of mankind depends more upon the relations of nations to one another, more upon the realization of the common brotherhood of mankind, than upon the separate and selfish development of national systems of law. God grant that there may be men who see this future, this hope, and that the plain men everywhere may know that there is no language of society in which he has no brothers, in order to reach the great ends of equity and of high justice.
Wilson offered the world more than feeble hopes and ideals. He had a plan, a blueprint for the future. Today, much of that plan still echoes in the ears of mankind.
I call for open covenants of peace, openly arrived at, after which there shall be no private international understandings of any kind, but diplomacy shall always proceed frankly and in the public view.
And in 1918, there were those who answered,
Open covenants of peace? Tommy rot. There have always been wars, and there always will be wars. America can live alone. Let other nations do what they please. Come fire or high water, we'll take care of ourselves.
And other nations did do as they pleased. And on a December day in 1941, an elderly woman who fully agreed that Americans could live alone was killed instantly by a bomb dropped from an unidentified plane. Her home was located 2 miles from Pearl Harbor and a number of thousands of miles from Tokyo.
San Francisco, June 1945. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war.
Costa Rica, Cuba, Czechoslovakia,
Denmark,
Dominican Republic,
Ecuador, Egypt, El Salvador,
Ethiopia.
The monument is being built, Woodrow Wilson. The cost is great, but the people are building it at last, as you knew they would. And lest it be destroyed, the people are standing guard. For we know now, as you always did, that the fortresses of liberty rise slowly and surely. That liberty is a thing of universal cooperation. And that liberty is rooted and grounded in the character of the people.
This is not a day of triumph. It is a day of dedication. Here, then, let us muster. But the forces of men's hearts wait upon us. Men's lives hang in the balance. Men's hopes call upon us to say what we will do. Who shall live up to the great trust? Who dares fail to try? I summon all honest men, all patriots, all forward-looking men to my side. God helping me, I will not fail them, if they will but counsel and sustain me.
We hear the challenge, Woodrow Wilson. This time we will not fail. We dare not fail.
This program was brought to you by the Institute for Democratic Education in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute. Listen in again next week to another program in the 10th series of Lest We Forget These Great Americans.